Hello everybody and welcome to another Twilight Zone review. Today it is Season 3, Episode 2, The Arrival, written by Rod Serling and starring Harold J. Stone as Grant Sheckley. And this episode is not good. Season 3 is off to kind of a rough start here, but it will get a lot better very soon, I promise. This episode has a number of problems, so I'll go through it and we'll see how it goes. So we start with an airplane landing. That seems normal enough. The only problem is when the two men tending to the landing of the plane open it, there are no passengers and no luggage. So yeah, that's pretty strange, but unfortunately this mystery is not as interesting as it sounds. So we're then introduced to our lead character, Grant, who is an investigator trying to figure out what happened. So he's gathering facts and asking questions, to various crew members. And, he talks to the men who discovered this, and he can't really figure things out. But he does figure out that the names of the pilots sound familiar to him. That's interesting. So Grant says, he will figure this out. There's also a public relations man and the head of the airline that are in on this. And the PR man says, this is impossible. This can't happen. And Grant says there must be an explanation and somehow he'll figure it out. So he's confident that he can do it. So then we go to another scene where the three head men are still questioning people and they start arguing, of course, about what's going on. They're all frustrated because they can't figure this out. And once again, Grant says, certain things about all this seem familiar. So then he starts talking about things like the seat colors and the plane numbers and how each man is seeing them in a different way. Like the head of the airline sees one thing, the PR man sees another thing, he sees yet another thing. So he has a theory behind what's going on. He says, it's crazy as it sounds, I don't think this plane is really here. I think we've all in some way been hypnotized to believe the plane is there, and we all see it in our own image. Now, that might have actually been an interesting story had it continued out that way. But unfortunately, we go in a different direction that really feels like a complete cheat. So anyway, he says, I'll prove to you that I'm correct on this. He says, start up the plane and I'll stick my hand, I think it's like in the propeller or whatever. And if I'm right, of course, nothing will happen. If I'm wrong, I'll be dead. Well, yeah, that's true. That seems a little extreme though, but I guess that would work. So he does this and the plane does disappear, so maybe he was right all along. The only problem is seconds later he turns to face the men and they have all disappeared as well. So now he's frantic, even though we as an audience I think pretty much now know what's happening, which is somewhat disappointing. So he's running around looking for everybody to figure out what happened, and he runs into an office and the main airline man is there. And he's talking to him. He says, yeah, I know who you are, but it's like none of it ever happened. It's kind of like they just met. So now Grant, thinks they're crazy. He says, you didn't have a flight that disappeared, and the head man and the PR man, there's a lot of men here, they say, no, we didn't. That flight landed fine this morning. Well, what we find out is that Grant was just basically hallucinating, so he was partially right. He was seeing, things the way he wanted to, but he was the only one. And the reason for this is because there was a flight lost years ago with that flight number, and it was the only case he never solved, why it disappeared into some type of fog, and it's bothered him all this time. And it's obviously starting to get to him. He can't handle that he failed at this. And the episode ends with him still talking about the flight. Give me a clue as to what happened because he can't figure it out. So basically, none of this ever really happened. It's one of those episodes that's basically pointless. And the twist really feels like a cheat, too. It almost feels like they set up a premise and didn't really have anywhere to go with it. So let's make it all a hallucination or a dream. It's really all the same thing. There's certain episodes where the explanations, work at the end by not explaining everything. This one doesn't work. It just really feels like a cop-out and a rip-off, honestly. This whole episode feels in slow motion, too. It feels like everything takes an extraordinary amount of time to happen, and it's just not that great of an episode. It is interesting in spots. I think the acting is fine. It's not the worst Twilight Zone ever, because it does keep you going a little bit, but it's just not very good. And overall, I give The Arrival a 1.5 out of 5. I don't recommend this episode unless you're a completionist, and better times are ahead in Season 3, for sure, very soon. So 1.5 out of 5 for The Arrival. As always, thanks for watching.